spend the rest of our time to talk about women and minorities in fashion law. I think that's an important discussion to have. But before we do that, what about social media and fashion law? I'll open it to the panel to chime in and let me know your views, starting with Marisa, on social media and fashion law and your thoughts in the direction, particularly from bloggers to just a general direction in technology.
I got it now. Got you. All right. I think what's interesting about the new blogging trend for fashion law is that it's really putting, it's really giving other folks, other lawyers, an opportunity to get a voice. And so before, remember, legal writing has always been, you know, well, to some daunting. Okay, not to you guys, but to everyone else, right? Legal writing is sometimes been daunting, but I think it's interesting as you're reading through these opinions, as you're reading through the Louboutin cases, they're citing to like these bloggers and these, they're citing to Devil Wears Prada. They're talking about, they're quoting dialogue from, you know, like movies, from music. It is the most, it is just, I love it because I'm a creative writer. And I created my blog, it's called You Who Darling, and I talk about fashion law, and I talk about fashion lifestyle, and I do all kinds of things. And when I first started, everybody was like, you're insane. Nobody's going to take you seriously. What kind of lawyer writes a pink blog? It's called You Who Darling. Like, what are you talking about? And I was like, well, this is what I'm going to do. And obviously, it's working. I'm still working. And Susan Scafidi, you go to her conferences. She did one on the little black dress, and you walk in. She's got Breakfast at Tiffany's playing on the big screen. All the tables have these beautiful blue Tiffany blue tablecloths. What I'm saying is, we're all talking about law, and it's all very important. But it's still, you know, there's like a little kick to it, which is totally my personality. So it resonates with me. I think that it puts you at a very good advantage. You can just start one right now, and all of a sudden, you drop some knowledge in your blog, and you could be quoted by Judge Marrero. You know what I mean? Like, it really levels the playing field. That also, you know, means that it's going to be very competitive. Because again, I guess when Stacy was starting out and when I was starting out, nobody was doing this, and they thought we were probably, I don't know, they thought I was crazy. Okay, yeah. So now it's starting to become cool, and you know what that means. Now that means it's going to be even harder to get in the room. For me, my journey was, you know, I went to Lockheed Martin. That was like my first client. I'm going to just tell you the story real fast because I think it's inspirational. But the point I'm trying to make is that when I was working at the trademark office, 3 years I was there, they laid off 150 attorneys during the dot-com crash, and I was like, OMG. Why? Because all my friends went to the big firms, and I call myself going to the government where there's some security. And there was nothing. So I leave there, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? I'm getting married in a week. It was horrible. But what I ended up doing was going to Lockheed Martin, and I got in there and started doing some, it wasn't even really what I wanted to do, but I ended up writing a business plan for them and saying I can really cut your bottom line, and they ended up giving me all their trademarks. And so that's how I kind of understood that, got to know the corporate setting. So now I had the in-house and the corporate, and I weave all that into my blog because I think all of that fashion law is really a very nice name for widgets. We're talking about widgets. We're talking about IP. It does not change.
All right, go ahead.
I
Your thoughts on social media.
have an interesting take on social media from a business standpoint. As you mentioned, anybody can start a blog, right? You just sign up and you got one. There doesn't really take any talent, really. The good ones rise, you know, because they actually have content that people are actually interested in, and they have something to share, right? But what we find is, you know, we work with people who come to work with Giordano. Some of them are students that Jill has taught in the master's program at the academy, or some of the other students that are trying to get a hands-on experience. But when they come into our studio, you know, everybody's excited to be a part of fashion. Everybody wants to share, right? And I'll do a Google search on Giordano, and all of a sudden, a garment that we're working on is on somebody's blog. And we're not launching this for 2 months. We haven't shot it. No one's supposed to know the fabrications we're using. I mean, it's all proprietary. And what I found with social media is, you know, a lot of the students that are coming up now they've been raised in an environment in which they share everything. You know, there isn't anything that's private, much less somebody else's stuff. So, it's kind of interesting because that's one instance where social media can harm you, but also, you know, taking that and being able to harness it once you do want to go out, it really kind of drives. You know, we'll find, you know, just doing a couple, you know, Google search and looking on analytics, just who's coming to our site, and really finding the trail in which they came. And a lot of it's through Twitter, a lot of it's through bloggers that we've reached out to and said, oh, by the way, here's a little, you know, snippet, and then they write about it, which is great too. And we also know a lot of bloggers who have started to gain some notoriety for what they do, and because of that, they're being approached by companies to wear their stuff, right? Most bloggers have this, fashion bloggers kind of have this allure that, you know, they're going in and finding the stuff and kind of putting it on and creating these cool little styles. Look at me, bam, you know, and everybody says, oh my God, so cute. But it's becoming a business now, you know, and they're kind of doing what stylists have done for a long time, in which they reach out and go, oh, I want this. And now they're being approached by people going, look, I see you have, you know, 20,000 followers. You know, I'll pay you to wear this, right? And I know some friends who've kind of gotten, they wore it and they didn't give credit, you know, with the name. They wore it because they never did. You know, oh, look at this cool thing I bought. I thrifted this. I bought this. This one's mine. Or, you know, but now all of a sudden they're essentially an extension of a brand for this one specific photo, and they're getting sued. So it becomes an issue because social media, which used to be just a general expression of oneself, is now becoming a business. And it's interesting because I'm seeing it a lot of different ways in which, because we're reaching out, right? It's our job to reach out to bloggers to get them to write about us. And through that, we've learned a lot. And we've met a lot of bloggers that are just really amazing people. But you're starting to see this really weird thing where the bloggers are starting to have a lot of power. They're starting to have the power that stylists have, and they're starting to have the power that editors have. And with them, I'm kind of interested to see what happens to that entire industry, because they're being approached by the big labels, because they become a mode of advertising. So
I think with the rise of, like you were saying, with the rise of fashion bloggers, it has happened at the same time with the democratization of fashion. So now anyone can be Anna Wintour. Right? You can have your own blog, talk about your style, and it's not limited to 3 or 5 editors in New York. And, you know, I assigned the Devil Wears Prada to my class, and that was part of our first class today, that our discussion of what we were talking about. And my favorite is the cerulean blue sweater quote that they quoted in the opinion. And, you know, the people in this room chose what you're wearing today from a pile of stuff. So now it's not the people in New York or the people with the print who have the power. The power has shifted to the style bloggers, and we see them there in the front rows, all the runway shows, and they're writing, and, you know, the world view of what's in style and what's in trend has changed, which is good and bad depending on, you know, who you are. We see all the different print media, they're going out of business, they're shuttering magazines, people are losing jobs. And then the style bloggers are like, look at me, I'm in the front row. And then, you know, because of issues like you were talking about, the FTC has now got involved. That's the Federal Trade Commission. So there are rules governing bloggers, and you have to disclose when someone has paid you to wear something, or even when someone has sent you something, you have to say, I'm wearing this because they gave it to me. And the FTC is really on this issue, and they've been watching it because they're there to protect consumers, very similar to the Trademark Board. They're interested in protecting all of you, and they don't want you to be fooled into buying something and thinking someone's endorsing or promoting something when they're really being paid to promote it. So you see things on Twitter, paid tweet or sponsored tweet, or you'll see in the bottom of blog posts, you know, these clothes were provided by, or we were paid to write this, or sponsored posts.
Content.
Sponsored content.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Go ahead.
No.
Go ahead.
No, okay.
Okay, all right. Several things on social media. Brian mentioned experience with interns. That's an opportunity for you to advise that client saying, hey, you know what, you need a social media policy or a social media agreement, and you lay out the terms. There's been a lot of issues with that with respect to what the courts are trying to figure out, the delineation of the line with respect to social media. Sometimes they think it's pushing too much. Sometimes they think it's not pushing too much. So that's one aspect. The other thing is, as a fashion blogger for a long time, actually, let me trace it back. Back in the days, once I transitioned from modeling to focusing on other things, I thought I wanted to do more journalism work. So I got the opportunity to start interviewing backstage, front row, the whole 9 yards, and having been in the industry, it got a little easier to do that, some of the big name designers, et cetera, et cetera. And what I found was that if I had a blog, which I subsequently started 5 years ago, well, going on 6 years, I couldn't get access. It was through the big name publishers that I wrote for that I got access, and the fact that my articles were syndicated extensively through those publishers, that I was able to get access to go cover the shows and the backstage pass. Over the years, I'm directly now solicited by the big producers to show up at the shows. So I say that directly because I don't write as much for all these publishers anymore. I'm very busy, but I have my own publishing company, my own online publishing company called Lady Brill Magazine, right? Which is essentially a blog. And what's happened over time is I'm directly solicited for, you know, clothing to wear to shows, products to review or just try on for whatever reason, and of course free tickets and shows, lots of campaigns to, you know, cooperate with some of the big brand names. We've done stuff with Michael Antonio. We've done stuff with all kinds of big brands that we've worked with over time. So yes, very real opportunity and a shift in power. It used to be before there wasn't a blogger conference, much less a fashion blogger conference. Now there's a huge one. Retail Camp, Stacy and I got a chance to be invited to Retail Camp back in LA, I think a year or two ago.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's been a big shift, and that is, to me, incredibly exciting. But it does create a lot of big issues and opportunities for you guys, not to just limit your career choices or practicing attorneys to diversify and expand their practice into social media or internet law, because there are issues of defamation as more people start using the internet, libel, all kinds of interesting stuff, contractual issues, internet privacy terms, among other things that you should think about. All right, so let's wrap this up. Let's pull it all in by talking about women and fashion law and minorities in fashion law. Stacy, let's start with you. You're a partner in a law firm. There's a theme I keep hearing, which is you go get it. You don't wait for people to bring it to you. You want to do fashion law, business proposal, etc. I know you have your mom.
Yep.
You have 2 kids.
2 kids.
You're a partner at a firm.
Yep.
Really shed light on what it means to be a woman doing fashion law, and whether people here can take that same route, how possible it is.
I personally think you can do anything that you set your mind to. And with that philosophy, and you have a goal in mind, you can get there. Now, the path getting there isn't always easy. And I find that you have to put up with a lot of stuff that you wouldn't necessarily want to put up with, but you take it in the short term to get a longer term gain. So The Devil Wears Prada is another really good example of this. So in there we see Andy taking a job for a year. She's got to suck it up, you know, do all these crazy things that her boss wants her to do, and if she completes her year successfully, her boss will help her get the job that she wants. It's very similar if you go to big law, if you want to practice in that environment. You're going to spend 1 to 5 years, depending on the size of the firm, doing the work that nobody else wants to do. You're going to have to put in the 2,200 hours a year plus the rest of the stuff that they make you do. And that's just, you got to wear the suit every day, and you got to wear the boring clothes, and you got to do all this stuff, and you just got to, if that's where you want to go and you want to end up as an equity partner in a law firm, you got to just kind of stick it out and put your head down and say, okay, goal, I'm going to get through this, and I'm going to get through this task, and I'm going to get it to this stage because I want something bigger on the flip side. And it's a very hard path to take. Like people, my mom's like, what are you wearing? I don't recognize you anymore. You know, she's like, you look like a bad, like, you know, Talbot's ad. And I'm like, and now I'm like, I get to dress funky because I've now proven myself. I've proven that I'm a good lawyer. I've proven that you can depend on me. I produce a quality work product. I'm not late for court. Clients are happy with my work. So you can do it, but it's much harder when you're trying to balance a family life or children and doing it all at the same time. And it's very, very hard. And then people are like, how do you do it? How do you have it all? And it takes a lot of hard work.
How long did it take for you to make partner at your firm with all this hard work that you were putting in?
With
I
all
just
that,
wanted to be as
yeah.
practical as possible for.
So I did it very quickly. So I was the fastest woman to ever make equity partner in my firm. I did it in my 8th year after I graduated from law school. So. With 2 kids along the way. So I'm kind of like, but that's so not typical. It usually takes 10 to 12 years minimum to try to get to that point. Your percentage of equity women partners in large law firms is usually about 10%. Women in law firm management or women running a practice group like I'm doing, this percentage is like 2 to 3%. So it's very, very small. You see a huge drop-off rate in the mid-tier level associates, and when push comes to shove, I don't know, Jenny, you guys read Above the Law. Did you hear about the party memo that the woman attorney wrote? Has anyone seen it? Someone's laughing. It means you must have read it. It's this woman who quits her job. I think she's at like one of the, not Winston, it's one of the big New York ones. And she writes this long memo about, I woke up at 6 a.m. to go feed the baby. Then I went back to sleep when the 5-year-old woke me up because he wet the bed. And then I ate dinner, and then I was late for the conference call, and the partner was an asshole to me, and then the whatever. So it was this whole thing. And I was like, she's so right. That's what a day in the life is like. And you have to set in your mind, am I going to be strong enough to make it through all this? Because if I can get to the flip side, I can make it easier for the people who come after me. I can make sure that you can do your conference call at home. I don't care. As long as you're on the phone, I know your work product is good. You don't have to be sitting at your desk at 7:30 in the morning like when I started we were required to do. So my goal is to help make it easier for the people who come behind me. And while you have to conform to certain norms and hit certain benchmarks, you can do it if you set your mind to it and you say, I'm going to put up with all this crap to get to my end goal. And it is. It's a lot of, I mean, it's the same stuff that the men go through, but it's harder for women because they think that we're going to go all have babies and have kids, we're going to quit, they don't want to invest in us, and, you know, it's just a reality. And when you have a dual income family, someone has to be in charge of the paydates and the birthdays and the parties and the kids, and that role has generally fallen to women and not to men. And, you know, my husband has a much less demanding career than I do, so he takes care of a lot of the kid stuff, not the playdates, because guys just can't seem to handle playdates. But, you know, you can make it work. But on the flip side, everyone says, oh, your husband stays at home? Like, is he stupid? Did you marry someone who can't get a job? Is he gay? Like, you know, you hear these things. You have 3 nannies? Well, how much are you making if you can have 3 nannies? You know, I don't have 3 nannies. But these are the kinds of things that women who work to try to make it through to the flip side, those are the kind of comments that you have to put up with. And you're just going to have to say, these people are ignorant. They don't know any better. And I'm going to change the stereotype. And the more people, the crazy thing is the more people a law firm has in their management, or management in general, if you have more than 20% of your management women, profitability increases by over 30%. Because women have a different leadership style than men. I guess we're more emotionally driven than, I don't know, there's some words for it, I don't know what it is. But because you add that into the mix, it shows that the firms are run better. So it's better for everyone if we can help everyone succeed. And just one more thing, and I'll let someone else talk. When I started, the hardest people to work for were the women partners. And these were the ones that came in, they did it first, they didn't get married, they didn't have kids. They're like, if I have to hear about another baby shower, don't talk to me, I don't want to hear about your kids. I'm like, so no one knew, like they knew I had kids. But I didn't have pictures of my kids on my wall, I didn't have anything like that. I wanted to be taken seriously as a lawyer. I wanted to be a good litigator. You knew I'd be at court at 8 a.m. You know I'd be in my suit. You know I have my brief prepared. And I don't want you to worry that I have children. So now I talk about my kids all the time. I put them on Twitter. I put them on my blog. But that's different. It wasn't when I was, not when I started. So you need to overcome these hurdles and these stereotypes. You can do it, but it's going to be hard work.
So we've heard, you know, a woman in a law firm setting Marisa, can you add perspective from a minority? I know you did more of the USPTO, but now running your firm, because it's real also as a sole practitioner or a small firm.
I think my approach was very zigzag, and it wasn't intentional. I mean, it was intentional, but the zigzag wasn't intentional. So for me, I think I had a plan, and it didn't work out. So what I tried to do, now you got to be creative. Okay, so when I started with trying to hustle up clients, emerging designers, there was a fine line because I'm thinking, yeah, I can probably do what I want because I'm a solo practitioner, but you do run into the same things of not wanting to dress, a certain way. What I did was I was trying to figure out how to get new clients. So I registered as a journalist for Fashion Week, and I run up in there and I'm like so fashionable that they don't know what to make of me. They're like, you can't possibly be an attorney because you look like, you're a designer. And so then I said, this isn't working. Then I tried a different approach. Maybe I went in as a photographer. Now I'm like in black. That didn't work. So, you sort of had to figure out. And so by the time I get the press pass to just get in the door, dressed like an attorney, that worked. Then I'm able to now make contacts with people. I'm able to meet Andre Leon Talley, who introduced me to this person, and then I go in like I'm the attorney who just happens to have fashion sense. Okay, so that worked. So then, when I was doing some lobbying in D.C., now D.C. is another type of animal because they're very conservative. They don't really know what to do with women, I swear. And so I'm trying to now, I wrote some legislation to create a fashion commission in D.C. So I'm lobbying with the city council, and these are men, and then the few women who are on there are not really playing that up. So they don't want to be the one to like embrace a fashion bill, which is what it was called. It was really basically trying to create a retail corridor in D.C. and to do some other programs that were going to try to brand the city as something other than what it was. Okay, but the whole lobbying effort taught me another thing, that, you really have to, for women, we do have, I don't want to say it's like a cross to bear, but it's like you really have to, almost be extraordinary. You have to be, but we know this already. I mean, you have to, you look the part, of course, but you have to really have everything else, together. Like your writing has got to be solid. And I found that for me, being consistent, being the good writer, always branding myself as like the dressing like I have a little bit of style, it makes people think, okay, you're in fashion, that was enough, and then when I have clients going above and beyond for them, enabled me to kind of create a lasting impression with people that seem to resonate. So that's for me what worked. I guess the juggle is always there. I don't have children, but I guess it's just, wanting to, I don't know, I think that your story is an interesting one because I didn't go the firm route, but I think solo practitioners, you don't work, you don't eat. So that means that you are constantly trying to figure out how to reinvent yourself. Where's the next big client going to be, and then how do I put myself in that position so that whoever those people are will take me seriously. So you're constantly reevaluating your approach. And I think that makes for an interesting day. For me, it may help me to get more creative, to be a writer, to get into the room, and then to make it happen.
Okay.
That's what happened.
Final words from the panelists on working with the fashion industry, or being, just your final words before we open it up.
Continue what they were just talking about.
Go ahead.
I find there's an interesting parallel between what we do and what you guys have done in fashion law. Is there's a certain point where you have to just kind of drop your ego and find your niche. And it takes a long time to go through those trials and figure out what works, what doesn't work, because not everybody, speaking from a fashion background, not everybody can design for that hot 25-year-old actress. There's a huge market, right? And once you can finally find your niche and who that person is, and drop the pretense of what kind of, a fashion designer who only does really short, really cute, little sexy stuff, but then, because that's what everybody originally wants to do, right? Because that's why you get into fashion. But once you can find your market, like what we've tried to do, and I'll give you guys my card, because we want to go for professional, strong women who they follow fashion but not trends, right? So they know who they are. You know, and it took us a while to get to that, right? Because you always want to be on the cover of a magazine. You know, and what goes on the cover of a magazine? The really cool, hot, sexy, trendy stuff. But in the end, you know, it's, you know, once you kind of can kind of like let go of that for a little while, step out of the spotlight or the assumed spotlight, find out what you want to do, find out what works for you. And once you kind of can latch onto that, then all of a sudden the press and all the interest and all the stuff that you really were assuming was going to happen in that other thing kind of comes to you because you've kind of stepped out of the normal path and gotten into a different kind of an environment where you can own it, you know, and it works and it's successful. And then all of a sudden, you know, you can step back into that spotlight and be that person. And all of a sudden people start coming to you for that because you kind of stand out a little bit, and which is what you guys did. You know, you trials,
Became the
tribulations.
expert.
You became the expert in a niche, and it's that niche is what's interesting because, you know, we're not going to fight H&M or Zara or, right, that would be ridiculous. Why would I design something that people could go, oh, is that an H&M dress? No, you want to go, oh, that's unique, you know, and a certain person's going to want to buy that dress. And, you know, once you can finally figure out who you are in that part, I found it really interesting that you guys both said stuff that Jill and I took that
So
same path
questions?
just on fashion.
2 mics over there, please. Feel free to go and ask questions. And thank you so much to the panelists. Any questions?
I can't believe we don't have any questions.
Oh, yes, you have
I'll
questions.
start with a question.
Sure.
So you covered a lot of different topics with Fashion Law. I'm curious about the startup fashion business, such as Gilt, Rue La La, Rent the Runway. Are those legal issues similar to other companies, such as Louis Vuitton, that you guys were talking about?
Jason, why don't you go ahead?
I think, yes, I think your online business has very similar issues to any big business. And when you're dealing with clothing and flash sales and product, when you take product that's seasonal and cyclical, so that's the fashion industry, and you put it on an e-commerce site, it's the same as a brick and mortar site. And if it's a Silicon Valley startup and it doesn't really have any products, but it just maybe drop ship, they'll have the same type of issues that a Louis Vuitton will have. So they still need their website, they still need contracts with their vendors, they still need people not leaking stuff too early about the sales. You know, so you still have to monitor the same type of issues with those kind of companies. There's a great conference in New York called Fashion Vest, and it's modeled after Early Stages East, which is a biotech and technology conference, and those conferences seek funding for those type of companies. So this guy named David Freshman worked for Early Stages East, and he said, no one is doing this right now for the fashion business, and their point of interest is where fashion meets technology. So this year they actually had the founders of the Gilt Group speak and do their keynote presentation, and they have this conference where they're trying to pair fashion tech companies with angel investors and all different kinds of investors. So you guys are up here in the Bay Area, you're not too far from San Jose, you're really close, so maybe your interest is internet, and maybe where fashion and internet collides, and that can be, like Uduak says, that can be your niche, and you still can be in fashion, but you're like the new media fashion lawyer. You know, so it's another way of branding yourself, and they'll have the same type of issues that a traditional brand will have.
We have more questions. Yeah, you do? Great, awesome.
Hi, my question actually touches, and I'm sorry I have this wine in my hand. But my question actually touches on what you just said about us being close to Silicon Valley. And as someone who does not have a background to do patents, how do you make yourself marketable to do, you know, intellectual property and to get in there and do copyrights and, you know, trademarks and things like that?
You want to talk
Well,
about that?
go ahead.
To Silicon Valley? I think I will just say, I mean, I never actually did not have a desire to work in the computer industry, right? So, and I thought that because I didn't have, when I landed there and was surrounded by all these software folks, engineer folks, and military, I was thinking to myself, good grief, what have I done? Because, so for preparing, it's really just about trying to immerse yourself into the nomenclature of that industry, because that is what, you know, really gives off, you know, it's more than surface, because when you start to read that stuff, it gets into your everyday speech and into your writing, and it can make your client feel more comfortable with you. So I had to, like, get out of the Elle magazine or whatever, and, get inside of, like,
Jet propulsion, something
yeah.
or other.
So, but, honestly, the law is the same. So, I mean, I think that it's not hard to do. It's just that when you get into the reading about it, you figure out where they're going to be, and you're just there. And all of a sudden, when you're having conversations, you're saying, oh, yeah, and you remember this, that, and then they say, well, this person knows what she's talking about. And then that's how you get the interview.
Thank you.
And there's a question over there.
Hi, I'm Titi Lio Tanubu at 3L at Berkeley, and my question is for really anyone who wants to answer, but mostly for Stacy, because I saw it in your bio, that you do corporate transactional work and litigation, which I found to be really unique because it seems as though in law school we're told to make a choice. So I wondered if you could just speak on that a little bit, how you managed to do both.
So when I was transferring from Thielen to Fox, when Thielen went out of business, I confused the hell out of all the legal recruiters. They're like, we don't know what to do with you. You can't do transactional law and litigate at the same time. And I'm like, well, I have an industry-focused practice, so yes, I have to. I started out as a litigator, and as I developed my own clients, they needed different things. And I'm not going to say I'm not going to do this for you because I'm just a litigator. So firms are becoming more and more flexible now, and you can have a mixed practice if that's what you want. But I wouldn't suggest starting that way. I think that what you're being told in law school is correct in that you should pick either one, and enter into, a firm or into practice in one area and get really good at that. And then once you're good at something, the rest of it follows. So for example, if I started out as litigation, you have to draft settlement agreements all the time. Settlement agreement is not that different from a contract with a sales rep, except the terms are different. So as you become comfortable drafting different types of agreement, it's easier for you to transition from one to another. Or as Marissa was talking about, consent agreements, and that's when two people with similar trademarks allow each other to exist in the same space. So you get good at filing trademarks and registering trademarks and prosecuting them, and then you can go into the litigation side because that spins off on that, or the drafting side because that's a consent agreement. But it's still rare, and it confuses a lot of people. It's easier to do it as a solo practitioner at a small firm because then you have a client and you have to do whatever, you probably can speak to that better, but you can do it. It just, again, takes a little bit of effort and energy, and you got to get people on board saying, no, I'm going to be really good at this, and here's why,
When I first started practicing, I was actually a healthcare attorney because I have a passion for health, fashion, and law. So I went in-house and I did healthcare-related work, representing people in the healthcare industry, drafting a lot of contracts, business transactions, sitting with executives, brokering deals, closing deals, helping to retain clientele, among other things. So definitely the transactional aspect and having an understanding of transactional work is important. In our practice now with AB2 Law Group, we do end up doing both transactional work and litigation work. My partner covers a lot of the transactional work. I do a lot of the transactional work too, but also we're prepared to obviously go in the front lines in terms of in court. One of the things I find, and the benefit of parsing it out the way Stacy was talking about, is you can literally see what the problem is going to be before you get there. So if you start off as a transactional lawyer, you've covered all the different kinds of agreements. Now when you get into the courtroom, you're like, so that's how that problem gets me in here. And it makes you a better attorney overall because you're better able to advise your clients, saying, you know what, that pothole over there is going to come into fruition down the line. Why don't we prevent it this way? So your job becomes to predict, prevent, protect, ultimately.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So my question is for the law students who are preparing themselves to get out in the field, and maybe for the guys, the law students who are graduating very soon. What kind of courses do they need to be thinking about taking? Because fashion law, from what I'm hearing, and Stacy and Marissa explaining it, body of knowledge of law that you're dealing with. So is there any particular thing that you should have in your tool bag so that when you get out there, you're beginning to get into the job marketplace, that you are more marketable, that you have more chances of being successful and more confident with what you have to do?
When people ask me that question, I said you should learn the fashion industry. So I'm like, do you subscribe to WWD? No. Okay. That's wrong. Fix that. Do you subscribe? We're in California. How about the California Apparel News? Do you follow trend websites or style bloggers? Do you know anything about the way the industry works? And usually they say no. And I'm like, well, how are you going to talk to a client and advise them if you don't understand how the industry works? So a part of being prepared, if this is the path you want to take, is understand the industry. Be it beauty, be it hair, be it makeup, you know, be it jewelry or shoes or wherever along the line you want to practice or wherever your passion is, know that portion of the industry and be able, I think you were talking about client development, if you can speak that language and you can go to a trade show or a conference or a dinner and be like, oh yeah, I heard yesterday that Revlon just bought this brand and this is a new fragrance that's coming out next week, you're going to be a lot more, you're going to seem as trustworthy and you're going to be a trusted advisor because you know what you're talking about. So as you think about where you're going to go and how you're going to get your first job, you know, I even tell people, if you've never worked in the business, go work at the Gap. You know, go pick a store, go work retail for a summer. And, you know, if you really want it and it's a new field and it's hard to get, then you'll work there and you can do research for a professor, so you still have the legal stuff on your resume, and you just really go for what you want. But getting some hands-on experience, you go intern with the designer. You know, and a lot of companies aren't big enough to have a legal department, but go intern with a PR company or with a stylist or anyone along that chain to get some experience in the industry, and that will help you become prepared because you've seen it. At least you've seen the issues in that segment of the industry, and they're not that different across all segments.
And to add on to that, let me add, as a fashion designer, I only learn, well, the general understanding of what the fashion world is like is of course helpful, but at every step, those steps I was telling you about, we don't learn those until we get there, right? So as a fashion lawyer, you know, if you have an understanding of what that next level is and what it takes to succeed at that level, we don't know that. We have to learn that on our own. It's not something that's taught in school. We just want to be artists. We just want to be designers. And then all of a sudden we find ourselves as business people. And, you know, it's being able to come to somebody like you guys and have just a general question. You guys don't have to figure out how to apply your knowledge in another part of the industry to fashion and hopefully get it right. Because there's very specific things that fashion designers need when it comes to contracts and law and vendor relationships and stuff that, you know, we don't know them. You know, we come to them and then all of a sudden it's there and we have to figure them out. So if you have that knowledge base for us to be able to come to you and go, I'm signing up for my first big trade show in New York, and these are the, so you're doing, you know, the E&K show, you're doing coterie in New York. Okay, well, this is how I've done this before. You know, it really helps us get to that next level and feel comfortable being there, because that's really the hard part, is being comfortable when you get to that next level and not feel so frantic, because it goes, like I said, it's really fast, it gets really expensive, and it gets really hectic. And just be able to have somebody with you to help you understand that is hugely helpful. We didn't have that. We had people we would ask at certain points, but we had to figure it out on our own. And the fact that I'm looking at all you people looking back at me, it's kind of, I feel good for the people who are coming up, because it's the fact that we're having this panel, I think, is hugely important.
Did you have
I was
something?
going to add real fast. I think the main thing for law students is just maintain your grades. I think that really, these days, because it's so competitive, when you get the opportunity, and you'll get the opportunity if you try hard enough, you know, and often enough, and you're knocking on the doors, they will see you. And then it's like, okay, what are your grades looking like? Because that's going to be who they give that first initial position to. And it might not have anything to do with, you know, your internships or whatever. So I think that's important. And the other thing, of course, is to do the reading so that you can get the words and understand, so that you can speak the language of whatever it is. And you can be surprised where you get that from. I mean, for me, I just picked up a textbook because I never took a fashion class, and I just read, like, fashion, just so that I could get into the flow of it, you know. And I think that kind of stuff is very important.
I would add several things. First of all, the industry is about relationships.
Yeah.
People have to respect, trust you to give you business. So build connections, build relationships, keep your word, respect your colleagues. Everyone you see here sitting next to you is going to be the next big thing, literally, in the legal field or a different area. And they're the ones that are going to bring clients to you. So maintain a respectful relationship with your colleagues even if you don't like them. It doesn't matter. So build connections. That's very important. While you're at Hastings, I would suggest several things. First of all, intellectual property course doesn't hurt because the big part of fashion has to do with trademarks. We hear it so many times. So why not understand an overview of what IP is all about? I would subscribe to your Hastings and Entertainment, Communications and Entertainment Law Journal. And I'm not just saying that because they collaborated with us, AB2 Law Group, to put this on. It's just very practical because you've got law students that are spending time to do the research and telling you where the legal issues are and what direction it's going through. So you don't have to, especially as a practicing attorney, it's better you can pick that up, trust the reliability of that amazing research they've done, and see the direction that you need to be going, and then do further research. So it's like your secondary source of research. So you want to do that. And then I would also say that it's just very, very important to be a very good lawyer first. When you get out, don't even worry about everything we're saying right now. It's crazy to say that. Fashion law is important, but ultimately it boils down to being a very good lawyer. Everyone sitting here, the lawyers sitting here, and certainly the designer, are very good. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here. They're really good at what they do, and they're very, very respected in the field. Be a very, very good lawyer. It starts first with that, because once you know how to issue spot, once you know how to follow through, literally, from the beginning to the end of a case, or parse it out however, it's easy to learn the industry, the fashion industry or whatever industry, and you already have existing connections and relationships, and you can go from there. A final point I would say...
Oh, sorry. I thought you were done. No, keep going.
A final point I would say, and one thing I realized that's very, very critical, especially if you don't necessarily have the grades, because not everybody has the grades. You know, some people are able to, but not everybody does. It's very, very, very important to break outside of the norm. Oh, God, I forgot the point I was going to say now. Go ahead. I'll come back and remember it.
I just wanted to let you know that I didn't take any intellectual property in law school. I didn't take trademark. I didn't take copyright. I didn't take entertainment law, nothing. And I learned it at work. And like you said, you learned fashion from a textbook. I would just read because I found it interesting, and this is what life threw at me. And I knew I wanted to do fashion. All I wanted to do was basically get really good grades, you know, get a summer associateship, get hired by the big firm because I know they'd teach me whatever I needed to know. So people are like, you're an IP lawyer and you didn't take any IP classes? So you don't, it doesn't necessarily what you take. It depends, not in looking back, it would have helped if I took it. However, it's not critical. So if you're in your third year and you're about to graduate and you're like, oh crap, I didn't take entertainment law, or I didn't take trademark law, and I didn't take this, and how am I ever going to do this? You can do it.
Yeah.
You can do it, become a good lawyer. So.
Exactly.
Sorry, I
break
didn't
out.
mean to jump.
That's okay. The final point I was going to say is break out of the norm and be willing to try different things. It doesn't have to be, especially if you don't necessarily have the grades, it doesn't have to be the traditional route. Nope. The exciting thing about fashion law is, unfortunately, the legal industry is not taking it as seriously as it should, and when they do, they're going to be like, oh snap, oh my God, we just missed out on all this money. So it gives you the opportunity, using everything everyone else has talked about here on the panel, to go in, dominate, and create an opportunity where big firms are coming to you with their clients saying, hey, I just have Gucci on the phone and we really need a fashion lawyer, and I just saw you online blogging, you've been blogging and you do fashion law. Can I retain you as off counsel or pass out my job to you? So think outside the box and be willing to just go get it. You got to be hungry, as they say. That's really the bottom line. Thank you all so much. I appreciate you coming.